The parent groups who have been rallying against the teaching of critical race theory in schools, well, now they've got a new target. Books, but not just any type of book, rather books written by certain kind of people, particularly black folk and queer folk. The latest one of these book banning frenzies took place in North Kansas City, Missouri, as soon as an anonymous complaint was made about two books. The district administration immediately removed the 2008 graphic novel Fun Home and the 2020 personal essay collection All Boys Aren't Blue from the library shelves of 4 high schools in 2 school districts, while a review process is underway. George M. Johnson is the author of All Boys Aren't Blue, which is also currently in development at Gabrielle Union's I'll Have Another Productions to be produced as a TV series. And George M. Johnson joins me now on Black News Tonight. George, so good to see you, family. This ain't the first time your book has been banned, has it?
So technically, this is the first time that I guess the ban has went through. We kind of knew this was coming at some point. I think the pandemic slowed it down a lot because a lot of parents just didn't know that the book, I guess, was in school systems, or not necessarily school systems, but in libraries. But technically, Kansas City they were the first to say that they wanted to ban the book, but 7 other states have beat them to doing it. So technically, as of today, they make the 8th, even though they were the first to make the campaign that the book needed to be removed from the high school libraries.
And what exactly, because I've heard words like pornographic used to describe your work and other work. People like Kiese Layman's masterpiece Heavy, I've heard described that way. I've heard a few of these books being labeled this way. Now, I did something that many people on the right who are trying to ban books don't do. It's a radical move. I read it first, and after I read your book, I couldn't figure out what was pornographic. I couldn't figure out what was so problematic. To be frank, I was expecting something, you know. You know what I'm saying? I know. I was expecting a whole lot more, man. What's the book about?
I mean, the book is about me growing up in the small city of Plainfield, New Jersey. It chronicles my life from birth until age 21, a coming of age story that talks about my struggles with my identity, sexuality, gender. Realistically, my parents, as well as my grandmother, knew since I was 2 years old that I was going to be queer. By the age of 5, I knew that I was different than all the other students. I didn't know what different meant. And so the book really is just my journey through figuring out what was going on inside of me, learning language, finding agency, and fully coming into my Blackness while starting to learn how to explore my queerness in a society that was intent on harming both of them. Realistically, the 2 sections that people are coming for is one section where I talk about sexual abuse that happened when I was around the age of 12 years old with an older cousin. But that chapter actually is discussing consent and how children can recognize agency and recognize when they're being violated and what to do when that happens. The second chapter they are referring to is the first time I had sex and when I lost my virginity. But what they are leaving out is that I was 20 years old when that happened. And I describe it descriptively what I was thinking about in that moment. But the part that I talk about when it refers to pornography is the fact that because we don't have sexual education in schools, porn was the only tool that I had and resource that I had to even know how to engage in sex. And so that chapter is really talking about how we need to give kids resources so that they know what they are engaging in prior to ending up in the situations that I ended up in.
So for me, part of the problem is that I'm not even sure that it was a battle or a debate between sort of people who disagree with you putting that in the book and those who don't. I'm not sure they even read it. It's also challenging for me to watch them move, you know what I'm saying? It's hard for me to also watch them move beyond the beauty of your book, right? Talking about
Yeah.
flea markets with your grandmother, talking about
Yeah.
the battle against bullying, right? Which is not a universal story, but it's certainly a story that many people have to encounter. They went through all of that and picked out two parts, and then took those parts out of context. Do you feel like, as a Black author and as a queer author, you're being singled out? Do you feel like you're being scapegoated? What do you think's happening here?
Yeah, absolutely. I always say, if I was a white queer who wrote this book, I would have won a Pulitzer, and I would be on every national television show, and I would have been heralded as the greatest thing to write a book since Ralph Ellison, or one of those great whites that I don't really know about. But I would have been heralded as like the second coming author of white people, right? Had I wrote this book as a white queer person. So I am definitely being singled out as a Black queer author, specifically because a lot of times when we have just queer writing in YA, which is young adult, a lot of it is fictionalized. And so people get to say, oh, wow, like that would be really sad if that happened to someone. Because I wrote a truthful story, people can't deny the truth. And so realistically, this is just a fight against the truth, because now people are like, oh, this did happen to someone and I played a role in that. And now I have to be accountable for the people who I have harmed, who have a story similar to George's. And so realistically, this is just an attack on the truth. We are in the age of critical race theory being challenged, when realistically all critical race theory is tell the truth, right? And so books like mine that simply are unwilling to take our foot off of harm doers' necks, whether it's heterosexual people, specifically white, cis, heterosexual people. They're going to challenge it, but they're going to try and find and pick apart pieces that they can challenge it under, so that they don't try to come off as being homophobic or try to come off as being racist.
So what do we do before we go? What do we do? I mean, book banning for me is very, very dangerous. It deprives people of a range of ideas. It's an attack on free speech. It's also an attack on the beauty. I mean, when I read the work of Black queer authors, whether it's you, whether it's Saeed Jones, I mean, there's so many people who are just writing beautiful stuff right now. And then also authors who are not queer, who are writing beautiful reflections on manhood and masculinity and race and justice. I mean, people like Kiese Layman, again, Heavy for me is a masterpiece. I know you can't solve the world's problems in 30 seconds, but what should we do to respond to the ban on our literature?
Yeah, for me, it's following in the footsteps of our ancestors, like Toni Morrison. Anytime you challenged her, she went on the offensive. And so I think allowing us to have platforms like this tonight gives us a voice. Oftentimes it's really the person who has the biggest bullhorn. I think that because there are several books being banned, many of them don't, but the authors don't have as large a platform as I do. And so because activism is at the heart of everything that I do, my book is a piece of activism, I am a form of activism, I utilize that and I utilize my voice, and I'm going to make sure that my bullhorn is just a little bit louder to go on the offensive against these particular types of people who are trying to ban books. But the ban book list is not a bad thing, because it just makes more people want to know what the hell they're banning, right? So it doesn't really deny, people being able to get it. But the other thing I do is I turn my work into other things, like a TV show, like a dramatic reading, so that you can't deny that this story will get out. And so I think that's the other thing too, is as Black folks, we just got to get even more creative about how we turn our books into other formats that they can't deny.
That's it. We keep fighting, we keep pushing, we keep battling, we keep writing, and
Yes.
we write and fight for our lives. And George, you are a big part of that. Everybody, I encourage you to check out his book, check out all these books. Every time they ban a book, buy 2 of them. That's what I say. Anyway, the best way to fight back against these racist and queerphobic attacks is to show our support. So support the books, but also go to independent Black bookstores, support public libraries, support book fairs, support author festivals, and of course, grab a copy of All Boys Aren't Blue and the newly released We Are Not Broken. And as always, again, keep it Black.